Good morning, fellow traders. This is Doug Campbell with Right Way Options, and this is the morning market prep video for December 11th, 2024. Well, I hope everyone had a great evening and ready for a big data point here this morning that could have some pretty substantial market moving effects. Well, first off, how about we take a look at what happened last night? If we take a look at Asian markets struggled just a little bit last night with a little bit of back and forth here. Shanghai ended up just a tiny little bit, $9.83. Hong Kong was lower by 0.77. India ended up pushing out just a modest increase, as did the Nikkei, up 0.01%. And Australia was down to 0.47%, with South Korea also slightly lower. If we take a look at European markets this morning, well, right now we're flat, but green across the board here at the moment as I'm recording. The DAX is up 0.04, the FTSE's up 0.14, and the CAC is up 0.19%. So very modest at the moment, because the entire world is waiting for our inflation data information today. If we take a look at U.S. futures, we've got the U.S. futures, Dow futures down 35 points. The S&P 500 futures are up by $5.50, and the NASDAQ futures are up 38 points, 37 points here at the moment. They are bouncing around and have been kind of floating between positive and negative here this morning. If we take a look at crude prices here this morning, looking at XLE, you can see we're getting just a little bit of bounce in the pre-market here on crude prices. Right now, oil is up 85 cents a barrel at $69.45 a barrel, and we have Brent crude up 88 cents at $73.05 a barrel. Natural gas is also moving higher this morning. It was starting down yesterday pretty hard, reversed, and now getting some follow through here this morning, at least in the pre-market, trying to push a little bit higher. China issued some policies easing, again, more stimulus, trying to turn things around over there, and that seems to have had a positive impact on oil. If we take a look at precious metals here this morning, well, gold is still trying to push a little bit higher. Right now, it's up $9.70 an ounce this morning, but at the same time, we've got silver, copper, platinum, and palladium all lower here today. And if we take a look at crypto, well, our crypto markets are happy this morning. BATO moving up this morning, up $1,993 a coin here at the moment, 2.10%, and Ether is also up $76 a coin, with most of those cryptocurrencies moving higher. If we take a look at the US dollar, well, US dollar is looking to open just a little bit lower here this morning. We'll want to keep an eye on that with the China currency work that they're doing over there, manipulation, I should say, of their currency over there. We could see some fluctuations here in the US dollar as well. Now, I apologize, I'm going through this a little bit faster this morning, and it's just because I've had a little internet trouble here today, and kind of running out of time to get this video out, so I do apologize. If we take a look at bonds this morning, bonds are hanging right in there. Right now, the 2-year bonds at 4.16%, the 10-year bonds 4.24%, and the 30-year bonds at 4.43%. Is we just have this uncertainty about what could be about ready to occur in the market as we get that CPI report. So how about we settle in, let's buckle up, and let's get ready for the Wednesday edition of the Morning Market Prep video. Good morning once again, everyone, and thanks so much for being here. I very much appreciate it. Let's take a look at these charts, see if we can gain a little bit of information about how we might want to approach the market for today. Remember, we want to look at these charts without bias. We want to look at them for what they are, not for what we want them to be, and really be focused in on the details of the price action in the market so that we can make better decisions on our trading day. Let's take a look. If we look at our diamonds chart here, as you can see, obviously several days in pullback now, 4 days down, and unfortunately we did break down below this little bit of price support here in the chart on the diamonds, causing us to move on lower, as I suggested that possibility yesterday that we could close that gap here, and we certainly did that yesterday. But it wasn't terrible, and I got to tell you, when you look at this chart overall, it's still a pretty darn bullish chart, although we have given up this trend. So if the bulls can find inspiration in the economic data today, then we would look for an attack up here to see if we can recapture that support level in the chart and maybe push back up toward this trend to see if we can break back above that area. Of course, you know, a good number here, the way the market's been acting lately, we've had the zoomies, so we can certainly zoom right back up here and then be facing an all-time high and a breakout in the diamonds. If the bears, however, find some inspiration here today, well, you can see that possibility where we could raise a little fear in the market. Our next area of price support might be right about there to push us down into that area would probably raise a little bit of concern. And then, of course, beyond that point, well, it just gets quite a little bit worse if we were to push beyond that point. And I do think there is a possibility of some big point moves today. So make sure you're protecting yourself, you're prepared for the day. Now, that doesn't mean that the world comes to an end, but it certainly could have some painful ramifications if you're overly long the market. If we take a look at the SPY, nothing at all about this chart is bearish, just a modest little pullback. We're coming into this price support. We're still holding on to this upside trend. So this could be critical here for the SPY today. If the bulls find inspiration, you can see wouldn't be all that much of a problem to see us pushing right back up here to test that that resistance high and possibly even break out. But if those bears were to find some reason to attack today on the data, then that possibility that we push down into this area of support would probably be okay if that's all further we do, and because that's a pretty common pullback to retest a support level. I wouldn't worry too much about that. But if we were to break that area of support, that's probably where some fear would come in and some big point moves could occur in the SPY. Our QQQ very much the same, still a very, very bullish chart, just a resting consolidation really at this point. You'll notice yesterday we did take a little bit of a run at that gap, but by the end of the day ended up holding it. So if those bulls find inspiration today, well, we need to start pushing back up through these levels here, and every reason to believe on a good data point we could be staring at a new record high by the end of the day. If, however, those bears find some inspiration, maybe a push back down and we fill this gap, come into this upside trend, we'll have to see if we can hold this area here. Fear in the market would likely come into place if we fell hard enough that we would drop below that area in that trend. So watch carefully here on the Qs. If we take a look at our IWM, well, our IWM continues to struggle with momentum here in the market. When we push so heavily into the QQQ and continue to hold up the QQQ, it just sucks all the energy out of IWM. Apparently, it just doesn't seem to move. But this is still in a bullish chart pattern. So every reason to believe if those bulls can find inspiration, we can start pushing back up and attacking some of these high points of that consolidation, breaking through there, we could try to push on up and see if we could attack that all-time high breakout here in the Russell. Of course, if those bears were to find inspiration here today, you could certainly see that possibility that we could give up this upside trend, start seeking out some of these levels below in the chart, and that might raise a little fear in the market. And I wish it wasn't. It's kind of like a coin flip today, how the market might react. So make sure you're protecting yourself, and hopefully you've got a plan on this. If we take a look at our VIX, well, our VIX rose a little bit yesterday, but then ended up pulling back a little bit. We came up here and tested this resistance in the chart, but obviously slightly elevated. We're up here around 14 handles. Today, I think anything is possible here. If the bulls come up with an inspiration here, we could see this drop and pull back really quickly. In the same thing, if the bears were to find inspiration, well, we could certainly see this pop and run really quickly too if we're starting to worry about inflation again. So watch that closely here on the VIX. Our T2122 indicator probably gives us our best opportunity here of a bounce, because we have been pulling this back pretty substantially. You will notice, however, we still have more downside opportunity here in T2122. But if those bulls can find inspiration, we have opened up a very big opportunity for a bounce back up. So you will want to be watching that closely here today for that possibility if those bulls can gain that energy in that that CPI report this morning. So watch that closely. Now, what it did show us yesterday is the weakness that we had in the market, the uncertainty that we had in the market. And if we look at T2108, also showed us that weakness and uncertainty. And unfortunately, we just barely slipped below the 50% area here in T2108, which means that just a few more stocks are below their 40-day moving average than those that are above. So that's a little bit of a psychological point here in the market that can raise some concern. If the CPI report continues to extend this to the downside, watch for a little bit of panic to potentially pick up in the market from this overbought in this overbought market condition. Now, of course, if the bulls find inspiration, well, we're going to continue to probably celebrate the Santa Claus rally if that CPI number comes in better than expected. You know, look out above. We could really pop and run to the upside. Our T2107 kind of the same, just drifted down yesterday, not nearly as bearish or nearly as big a concern as a T2108. As you can see, we're holding up here around 57 on that, so 50% is way down here, so we're still holding up in here pretty well. If the bulls were to find inspiration, I would look for an attack up here and maybe even a breakout, and we start running up here toward these mid 65 areas, which becomes a very, very frothy area of T2107. If the bears were to find inspiration, well, we might break this upside trend, really start pushing down here to attack some of these next levels of support. Let's take a look at our T2101, and our T2101, well, not much happened there yesterday. Pretty darn flat. Again, uncertainty in here. If you're a bull, what you're going to want to see is, if we're rallying, you're going to want to see this, seeing that momentum building on the bullish side. We don't want to see a rally and have the breadth continuing to fall. If, however, those bears were to take over and we were to see those bears take over and see that breadth expand, that's going to be good for those bears. We'll want to watch that carefully, and I think both possibilities could exist here today, depending on how we react to that CPI number. Let's take a look at our economic calendar here for today. And our economic calendar, well, what we've been talking about here all morning is what we've got coming our way. First off, we're going to get those mortgage applications this morning. Watch that carefully. Could have some ramifications for the market. And then after that, a CPI report. And the consensus on the CPI is they're expecting an increase, that we may have hit a little bit of a wall on this, which of course affects the FOMC in their desire or ability to cut rates. So you can see we were here prior was 0.2%. They're suggesting we increased to 0.3, and the year over year goes from 0.6 to 0.7. Now, it is possible if we come in at those numbers, the market will go ho hum, that's not too bad. We're going to be okay. Everything is fine. And the CPI number becomes almost a non-event. However, if these numbers were to come in hotter than that, look out. We could have some major market moves to the downside in that situation. If they happen to come in lighter than expected, look for the market to really celebrate that and a push to the upside. So anything is possible here. Watch that number carefully today. Unfortunately, it's going to happen before we can really do anything, an hour before the market opens. So unless you're trading futures, there's not much you can do about it. If you take a look here, we've got a petroleum status report today, a couple of bond auctions. This 10-year might be interesting today, and of course a treasury statement. And I would expect that CPI number is going to have some ramifications for those bonds as well. Watch those bond yields today. They could bounce around here quite a bit depending on how that CPI number comes out. Now remember, we get through that number and then we're going to jump right over here into Thursday, and we're going to have jobless claims and another inflation number, the producer price number. So keep an eye on that and be planning carefully how you want to address those reports in your trading account, making sure that you're protecting yourself from those big potential moves that could be occurring. If we take a look at our earnings report today, well, our earnings is a little bit light today. Not a whole lot on there, but a few notables to be paying attention to. We've got CGNT that will be reporting this morning. Looks like we got a little bullish action going in that already today. PLAB also showing some bullishness here this morning. In fact, breaking nicely higher here, so keep an eye on that. And REVG reporting this morning. Looks like not quite so much excitement in that one here today. This afternoon, we've got our most notable of the day, probably going to be Adobe. Adobe will be reporting. You can see we got a nice little potential bullish setup coming into that report. We've got NDSN this afternoon and OXM to be paying attention to here this afternoon for those potential afternoon notable reports. So keep an eye on those. How about we take a look at a few stocks that could be setting up for today? But before we do that, everyone, if you could do me that quick favor, if this is the first time you've seen these videos, if you could please click that subscribe button on YouTube and also click that bell icon when it pops up, so you'll be notified every time I post a video. And if you find these videos to be useful or helpful, if you could do me that favor, click that thumbs up button, leave a brief comment. That helps the channel to grow. Thank you so much to everyone who takes the time to do that. I truly appreciate it. Now, taking a look at some stocks that could be setting up here, remember everyone, these aren't recommendations to buy or sell any security. You need to do your own due diligence. Be very, very careful in this market. And remember, no matter what we look at here this morning, everything could change on that CPI report. So be thoughtful of that. These might be something good for a list. One of the stocks that is looking pretty good here and finally coming around out of a bottom, Dollar General starting to perk up here, and Dollar General is coming into what we call a rounded bottom breakout pattern. Nice looking chart coming up here, trying to see some bullishness in Dollar General. Might be wanting to put that one on your list. DLTR, Dollar Tree, also putting in a very, very bullish pattern. You can see moving in this upside trend, pushing up Nice little pattern in here for the next push to the upside. You'll want to watch this carefully here on this resistance level, but if we can push through there, we may have some nice upside potential, but that is at least until we reach this major downtrend. So watch that carefully here in Dollar Tree. And I also saw Ross Stores, another discount seller here. Ross Stores looking good, breaking through some resistance, trying to show some bullishness in here. If we can hold this support up here, there may be an opportunity for some more upside. And then, of course, continuing on that discount retailer theme, Five Below, this big gap up here on Five Below, little resting pullback in here. If that can find that next area of price support here in the chart and those buyers can pick up, I'd keep an eye on some of those discount retailers here in the market. Let's take a look at Oracle. Oracle had this major drop here on their earnings report. Big old gap down, but immediately buyers came back in, and that's something we see a lot anymore. I don't know why that is the case. When the company reports terribly, it's just an immediate hurry up and buy that chart. But we'll want to watch this carefully as we approach this resistance zone up here, maybe somewhere between here and up here. I would watch that possibility that we run into that resistance and then continue that rollover to the downside. So be kind of careful here. Very much the same as what I was mentioning here in AMD, as we rallied back up into those resistance areas, and then of course we ended up reconfirming the downtrend with a new low here on AMD. Watch that carefully here because this is looking very much the same in that move. Take a look at TJ Maxx. TJ Maxx had a really nice little bullish consolidation going on here. This morning we're getting a little bit of a pop and drop on that in the pre-market, but keep an eye on TJ Maxx. That's looking good. And when we look at Mickey D's in here, old Mickey's looking pretty good in here in a potential upside setup. You can see the nice little upside trend going on in here. Obviously we're capped by this downside resistance here in the chart. Watch that carefully. If we can get that bullish inspiration today, we might pop right on through and see Mickey D's moving on higher. Take a look at Alcoa. Alcoa was really setting up in a great bullish pattern, but then aluminum kind of fell apart and we broke that trend. So at this point, any rally back in Alcoa, I'd be watching that for a potential short. So keep a close eye on that. Take a look at AT&T. Now I know AT&T is an old boring, no one likes old boring stocks, maybe, except me. Old boring stocks that pay really good dividends for longer term holds and a little buffer to my account. Right now AT&T continuing to show lots and lots of bullishness. Had a little resting pullback, hammered in here yesterday. We rejected the pushback. Watch this area price support. If we can find that bullish energy in the market, may have that opportunity for that to push right on higher. TMUS was another in that sector, but boy, it had a really bad day. I've got a different impression on this altogether. That big ugly candle in here is not looking good at all. So that possibility for this to be bullish, we're going to require that to cross back up and prove it can hold before I'm going to be looking at that for any kind of a long. Any pullback right in here could be pretty substantial if we find some resistance above in that chart. Take a look at Cisco. Now Cisco had a little bit of a drift lower here. This was setting up really good. Oracle seemed to have a kind of a bearish tug on this, pulling it down just a little bit. But if we can get that inspiration in the market today, I see every reason to believe that this isn't so bad that this couldn't push right on back up. So watch that carefully here in Cisco. Take a look at SQ. Now I got to tell you guys, I have a bias here on SQ because I'm holding it and I've just got a stupid big profit on this, holding this longer term, but getting this resting pullback in here. If we can find bullishness in the market, we might catch this little upside trend and push this right on up here. Now, I do have, just to be fully disclosing what's going on here in my bias, I've sold the short 100 calls on this just to hedge this potential pullback if it continues to fall. But if this engages and pushes up, really kind of hoping they pop above that 100 and I get called away, because we're a little steep in this rally and I'd rather have it rest a little bit. So watch that carefully here in SQ. PayPal also holding in here, and I have great profits in this as well. Recently added to this trade. PayPal continuing to look good. Any resting consolidation in here out toward that trend still sets up that opportunity to the upside. Watch that one closely as well. Take a look at DKNG. Now, DraftKings had a really good thing going on and pushed up and then ended up giving that away, pushing down. So we're going to want to watch this carefully. It is certainly possible, if we continue this break of this support, things could get ugly here in DraftKings, so watch that carefully. Now, it's interesting that that's happening while at the same time I'm seeing some of our big box casinos out there starting to show some bullishness. Take a look at Las Vegas Sands pushing through some resistance, setting up a nice bullish pattern. Any bullishness in the market could push that on higher. Wynn Casinos also setting up in a bullish pattern. A few defensive sector stocks that you guys might want to be keeping an eye on. Take a look at CLX. Clorox continuing to just rest across this nice little consolidating support area here in the chart. If we can find some bullishness in the market, and remember, bullishness in this might mean a little bit of bearishness in other places of the market, and folks seeking a little bit of safety, we might see this push on higher. Keep an eye on that. Saw Coke yesterday, still trying to put in this double bottom formation. Watch that carefully here if that can gain a little bit of energy to the upside. PepsiCo kind of doing the same thing here in the market. Something to pay attention to on that defensive sector side. So with that, everyone, I want to wish you all a fantastic day. I want to wish you great results in your trading. Thank you so much for being here today. Thanks for all of the kind support that you offer the channel with your kind responses and support of the channel. Thank you so much. Y'all take care, be safe, have a great day, and as always, I wish you all the very best.